Hi everyone, today we're going to be learning about functions. So first of all, what is a function? A function is sort of like a rule that states that there's only one output value for any input value. So the output is the y variable and the input is like the x variable. So it means that we're going to plug in an input value and we're going to plug in a value for x to find a value of y. So here I made two input and output tables and we're just going to see whether they are functions or not. So the first table, we see here that there are two of the same input values. We have two, but we have two different output values. This means that this is not a function. This is not a function because there are two output values for only one input value. And this does not follow the rule of what a function is. And let's look at the second table. Here we have the same output value, but we have two different input values. But this is still a function because it still follows the rule that there is only one output for one input. Because there's 3, when we plug in 3 we get 2, and when we plug in 6 we also get 2. But here we're plugging in 2 to get two different output values, while here we're just plugging in two different input values to get one output value. And this is still a function, but this is not a function. So functions are often written as f of x, or this can also be read as the function of x, and that's basically the same thing as y. So for example, let's say we have the equation y equals 2x plus 1. This is the same thing as saying f of x equals 2x plus 1. And a lot of times it's just f because it stands for function, but it can also be other variables, like we can also have g of x equals 2x plus 1. Yeah, it can basically any variable, but it just means y equals. It's just showing that it's a function. So we're going to move on and we're going to determine whether these graphs are functions. And in order to do so, there's something called the vertical line test. And this means that we're going to just draw a bunch of vertical lines. And if one line intersects two different points, then this is not a function. So we're going to check out these two graphs. So the first one, I'm just going to draw a bunch of vertical lines. And we can see that this is a function because each line only intersects the graph once. So this is a function. And this makes sense and it follows the rule of a function because there's only one output value or one y value for every x value. But let's check out this graph. I'm just going to draw a bunch of vertical lines, but we see that each vertical line crosses the graph twice. This means this is not a function. And this makes sense because we have one input value, but we have two output values. And so this does not follow the rule of a function. So we're going to try some example problems. So the first one says f of x equals 2x minus 1, g of x equals the square root of x minus 4, and it asks us to find these things. So the first one says find f of 3. So we're just going to plug in 3 to the first equation right here. So 2 times 3 minus 1 equals 6 minus 1, which equals 5. So the answer here is 5. Now the next question says g of 2. We're just going to do the same thing except we're going to plug in 2 to the other equation for g of x. So we get the square root of 2 minus 4 equals the square root of negative 2. But this is not an answer because there's a negative inside the square root and that would create an imaginary number. So therefore the answer here is no real solutions. And that would be the answer. Now, the next problem says g, and then it has f of 3. So we're only going to focus on this f of 3 first, and we found from this number 1 right here that f of 3 equals 5 right here. So we're going to just substitute 5 in for this part. So we have g of 5. Now this is what we've been doing before. We're just going to plug in 5 to this first g of x equation. So we get square root of 5 minus 4, which equals square root of 1, which equals 1. So 1 is the answer. Next question, it's not a number, it says x squared minus 2, but we're just going to do the exact same thing and we're going to plug in that to the first equation. So we have 2 and x squared minus 2 minus 1, and we're just going to multiply this out, and we get 2x squared minus 4 minus 1, and we get 2x squared minus 5, and that would be our answer. And even though this is an equation with an x value in it, it's still okay. It's still the answer because it just asked us to plug in an x value here. Sorry. Okay, moving on. F is a linear function. F of 1 equals 3 and f of negative 2 equals negative 2. Find f of 2. So it's exactly the same type of problem as the equations that, or the questions that we did before with lines, but it just has everything written as functions. So here, this means that when we plug in 1, we get 3, so we can create the point 1 comma 3. And here we can do the same thing. We can get the point negative 2 comma negative 2. And then we're just going to create an equation using these two values right here. We're just going to use these two values to make an equation, so then we can just plug in 2 to find this value. So I'm going to make the equation. And first I'm going to find the slope by taking y sub 2 minus y sub 1 over x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And I'm just going to make this first part, I'm going to make this x sub 1 comma y sub 1, and I'm going to make this x sub 2 comma y sub 2. So I'm just going to plug that into the equation. So we have negative 2 minus 3 over negative 2 minus 1 equals negative 5 over negative 3, and then we get 5 over 3. So that's the slope. So I'm just going to plug that into the y equals mx plus b equation by writing y equals 5 over 3x plus b. Then I'm just going to choose one of these equations, and I'm just going to first choose this 1 comma 3, and I'm going to plug that into this equation to solve for b. So we have 3 equals 5 over 3, and we're going to plug 1 in, plus b. Now we just need to solve for b. So we have 3 minus 5 third equals b. So then we have b equals 9 over 3 minus 5 over 3. So we have 4 over 3. So therefore, we're just going to plug this b back into this equation right here, and we get y equals 5 over 3x plus 4 over 3. So this is our equation. And in order to, and also y, since this is a function, we should make that f of x, sorry. But we're just going to plug in 2 into this equation to solve for f of 2. So I'm going to take this, and we have f of x equals 5 over 3x plus 4 third. And then we want to find f of 2. So we're just going to plug that in, plug 2 for x. So we have 5 over 3 times 2 plus 4 over 3. And this equals 10 over 3 plus 4 over 3. So we have 14 over 3. And therefore 14 over 3 is our answer. Thank you for watching.